Hello, Crosspoint students. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful night. And if we hadn't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Trevor. And honestly, I'm really glad that you're here with us tonight. But listen, I can't tell each of you that specifically, so I need your help. I need you to look at your neighbor, maybe to your left or to your right, and say, hey, what's up? I'm really glad you're here tonight. Now I need you to answer a question. You can just answer this in your head, but has there ever been a time in your life where you feel like you just don't matter? Personally, there have been multiple times in my life where I wasn't sure if I really mattered, if I mattered in life, but even really if I even mattered to God. And whenever we feel like this, it's really easy just to become discouraged, really easy to become disengaged. And you know, when no one's listening to what we say and it feels like no one's paying attention to us, it's really difficult to feel like we matter. And when we feel like we don't matter, it takes the passion, it takes the excitement completely out of our lives. And we don't feel like we're really living life to the fullest. We're not really thriving life. We're just kind of surviving at that point. Nobody wants to feel that way. But sometimes it's much more than that. It's possible that you have a lot of people in your life telling you that you matter. You know, your parents or grandparents or, you know, even coaches, and they say, you know, I believe in you. I want what's best for you. And it means something, but there are parents. There are coaches. Obviously they're supposed to say those things. The coach is just trying to get the best performance out of us. So whether we hear this message a lot or whether we hear this message, we really don't hear this message at all. Believing we matter is sometimes it's a lot harder than it looks. And here's the truth. The good news is that today we're gonna talk about someone who is very, very familiar with those same feelings that you and I, like, we've all experienced. And I think that we can learn a lot from her life. And hopefully this speaks some reassurance into our individual worlds. In this series, Afterlife, we're talking about Easter and what people would consider the biggest day for followers of Jesus, because this is the day that we celebrate Jesus' resurrection. When he came back from the dead, it's a big deal. He showed the world that he conquered death and that he's so much bigger and so much better than anything we could possibly imagine. And it's such a beautiful season. More specifically, we're talking about people who encountered Jesus after his resurrection. And that had they had a different life after they saw him. And their afterlife changed so much while they were still on earth. And today, we're going to talk about a woman named Mary and her experience with Jesus before and then after the resurrection. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the context of where we're reading. The Bible, first of all, is just, you know, this Bible right here is a collection of 66 books, and there's two parts of it, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And the Old Testament is basically this collection of books before Jesus walked on the earth. But then the New Testament is what we read about Jesus after, once he was born. That's the rest of the New Testament. And then there's 4 books in the New Testament. The first 4 books in the New Testament are called what we call the Gospels. And they're accounts from different people who knew Jesus. And those Gospels talk about a handful of different women named Mary. And I think Mary was a pretty popular name. It was trendy back then. But there's Mary, who was the mother of Jesus. And then there was a few other Marys. And then there was Jesus. When Jesus was dying on the cross, there were 2 other Marys there mentioned as well. And one of those Marys is named Mary Magdalene. And there are a few things that we know for sure about Mary Magdalene. One is that she was just a diehard, committed follower of Jesus. And in fact, her name is mentioned more than any other woman that wasn't a part of Jesus' family in the whole Bible, which is awesome. The Gospels mention her 12 different times throughout the 4 books of the Gospels. Luke tells us that she traveled with Jesus, that she helped support his ministry, and she was just there helping financially and all sorts of things. He also mentions that before Mary met Jesus, Mary actually, she was in a pretty dark spot in her life. And for a period of time, she actually had 7 demons living inside of her. And when she met Jesus, it was this beautiful moment of Jesus actually casting out demons and giving and just showing her how much she loved her. And I know that sounds so crazy, but basically what that means is she was a complete outcast before Jesus healed her. She definitely felt like she had no worth up until this point. and her entire life, she had been believing that she didn't matter to anyone, let alone God. So I think it would be safe to say that Mary really, really understood what it meant to feel like she just didn't matter. And here's why we're talking about her today. Because all four of the Gospels record that Mary Magdalene, she was there when Jesus was put on the cross. She was, out of the three of the four Gospels, she was there at the burial, at Jesus' burial. And all of the Gospels say that she was the first person to see Jesus after he resurrected. This is a big deal. This person is important. Y'all, the disciples get a lot of credit for being Jesus' most loyal followers, but there was no other disciple around in these big moments of Easter as much as Mary was. And the day when they celebrate that Jesus was coming back from the dead, she was right there. And we should pay attention to one of the people who knew him best. She doesn't get a lot of attention. She doesn't get a lot of credit. In a lot of ways, it seems like she's kind of on the sidelines. And if you don't pay attention to what you're reading, it just sounds like there's a bunch of women named Mary in the Bible that no one can really keep track of. But you definitely don't get the sense that she was one of the major people in this story, but she was. And that's huge. See, the Gospel of John, which was written by another one of Jesus' disciples, records that while it was still dark, Mary got up, she went to Jesus' tomb, but when she got there, the stone had been removed. The stone was out of place, and it was gone. And what Mary did immediately, she thought, oh my gosh, Jesus is gone. Where is he? And she didn't think, oh yeah, Jesus is alive. Woo. She freaked out, and she assumed that someone had stolen the body, had took his body away. And she went straight to Peter, one of the other disciples, and to tell them. And she ran and she said, hey, we got to run to the tomb. We don't know where Jesus is. The body's gone. And Mary was right. The stone was gone. The body was gone. And all that was left there was Jesus' grave clothes. And the disciples, they went and left to tell the other people to try to figure out where Jesus' body had gone, who took it or whatever. But in this moment, the sadness of losing a friend was so much for Mary that now all she did is she just stayed at the tomb and just wept and just mourned her friend. And John actually writes this in John chapter 20. So if you want to open your Bibles to John chapter 20, he kind of continues this story of where Mary is. It says in chapter 11, or verse 11 in chapter 20. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over looking into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting there where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and one at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you're looking for?" Thinking it was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Don't hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I have ascended to the Father and to your Father and to my God and to your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her. Guys, so on the day that Jesus defeats sin, proving God is so much bigger and so much stronger than anything else, he made sure that Mary was there to see it. And this was a really big deal because in the first century when Jesus lived, a woman was not seen as a reliable witness. She couldn't really testify in court. Her word was not to be trusted over a man's at all. And yet over and over and over again in the Gospels, at the cross, at the tomb, on this Easter morning, it was a woman who saw Jesus first, who recognized him, who was given the job of telling others. Such a big deal. When the rest of the world saw woman as unreliable, inferior, untrustworthy, Jesus saw something completely different. And he valued and he elevated them. When the rest of the world didn't, Jesus made sure to trust Mary with this thing, and he trusted Mary with his resurrection. He knew that Mary would. He knew Mary by name, and he chose her to be the first person to share the good news. This is huge. While others made these assumptions about Mary because of her gender, her past, we talked about her past, like it's pretty dark, or anything else that you would have written about her would have taken her out of the story. Jesus brought her in. Jesus wrote her in the story as a major character. And Jesus made sure that Mary knew that she had value and her word could be trusted. So guys, when the world was sending Mary one message, Jesus sent her something completely different. And if Mary wondered who she could believe, the resurrection of Jesus gave Jesus all the credibility in the world to Mary. So no matter what messages others may have given Mary, no matter what messages we may have been getting, because of the resurrection, we can take what Jesus says very seriously. And Jesus said, Mary, you matter to him. And I think we can kind of think of it this way. Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered to Jesus. Today we celebrate something that happened 2,000 years ago, a day that changed the world forever. But on that first Easter morning, it changed the lives of the people who knew Jesus best, most of all. And because now everything Jesus had said meant more than it did before he resurrected. Easter morning, Jesus coming back from the dead proved that Jesus was exactly who he said he was. And his words mattered. They carried weight. The morning he spoke words to tell us about Mary's, just her worth and her value. And in a culture where Mary, she would have heard over and over and over again that she wasn't enough, that she didn't have the credibility, and that she should kind of stay on the edges, where she belonged. Jesus made sure to say the opposite. His message to get her was different. Her message to love her was different. And the same is true for you, and the same is true for me. See, just like Mary mattered to Jesus, so do you. Just like he knew her name, he knows your name too. And he knows the name of the person who's sitting there, who you're honestly, like right now, you're just feeling a little bit overlooked, you're feeling unseen, kind of forgotten. And he knows the name of the person who feels like their part in the story really, really doesn't matter. He knows you. He knows you better than you know yourself. And that's such a gift, such a blessing. Because of Easter, because of the resurrection, Mary knew that Jesus could be trusted and could be taken seriously. She experienced Jesus' words firsthand and what he did firsthand. And then she passed it on. She passed on the good news to the rest of the disciples. And we are here today celebrating Jesus coming back to life because Mary accepted the love and the attention of Jesus that allowed her to carry this message back to Jesus' followers. And we get to celebrate in that right now because of that, because of Mary. So this week, that's the message I want you to take home. First, I hope that like you are seen, you are known, you are loved. So important, regardless of your past, regardless where you come from. And Jesus makes that so clear in his word. And if we wonder if we can take Jesus seriously, his resurrection is a reminder that we can. He defeated death. We can trust what he says. And Jesus says Mary mattered to him, and he says that you matter to him, and he loves you so deeply. And the person next to you matters to him, and the person on the other side matters to him. And when we live like that is true, our lives just look different. And the lives of the people around us and we interact with start to look differently too. So there are two things I think we can do with Mary's story. First, I think we just need to recognize is like, do we realize that we really matter to Jesus? And secondly, we just need to recognize what it means for what does it mean for our lives that we do matter to Jesus? So to find out if you really believe that you matter to Jesus, I want you to think about how you treat yourself and how you treat other people. And just in your own head, in your own space right now, ask yourself a couple of questions. Like, do you believe that you matter? Like when you hear that, do you really believe that you matter? And kind of to show if you do believe that, do you treat yourself like you matter? Do you love yourself like you really matter, like you're worth something, to Jesus? And here's an important question to ask yourself. Do you allow other people to treat you as if you matter or as if you don't matter? Because the way you allow other people to treat you often shows you your own heart, of how you believe in your own heart, and if you believe that you really matter. And I think another way you can see, do you believe that like these other people matter to Jesus, these other people matter in life, is how you treat other people. So do you treat others as if they matter? And just ponder these questions. It's so important for us to just gain that self-awareness to know where we're at. And then the second thing is to recognize, what does this mean for our lives? Like we have the self-awareness now. Like, what does this mean for us? When we believe we matter, our life has purpose. When we believe we matter, that means that now we have a direction to go. Now we have a purpose for our life. See, Mary, before she met Jesus, was living empty, completely purposeless. She was living in this life of just emptiness. But then all of a sudden, she realized how much she was loved by Jesus. So she gave up her old life and she began to follow him. And because of that, we were able to live into the story of something so much bigger. And now we get the story from Mary because she got to live into this moment where she gets to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. She got to be the very first person to talk with Jesus after his resurrection. Could you imagine? I would kill to be Mary and be there and see Jesus firsthand, in person, right after he rose from the dead. I mean, I can't imagine how wonderful that might have been. So as you guys go, what would it look like for you to start treating yourselves and others like Jesus did, like they mattered? What would change in your life if you really believed you mattered to God? And because of that, the people around you matter as well. Would you be more confident? Would you be more intentional in your relationships, in your friendships? Would you care less about what other people think of you and say about you? This week, when you talk to your small group, I want you to think about what could change in your life if you really believed that you mattered to God. Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered and her afterlife looked different. So now we know and we believe that we matter to God. So what does it look like for our afterlife, for life after this moment? What does it look like later on? So discuss that in your small groups. We'll see you guys next week.